Hello there. I apologize for having taken so long between videos. With the kids doing at-home school and my husband working from home, it's been hard to find space to go ahead and make videos, but I've got some time and some space set aside today, so I thought we'd go ahead and get started with building block number 10, SSK, which stands for slip, slip, knit. Slip, slip, knit is a type of decrease that leans to the left. You can certainly see those in the picture here. I thought I'd demonstrate real quickly with an old cardigan that I made many years ago that for the sleeves here, you can see how I've done slip, slip knits for this side of the sweater so that they lean toward the left, while on the other sleeve I did a knit two together decrease. Where is it? A knit two together decrease so that it would lean toward the right. All right, so they're basically the same thing. It's just that one leans left and one leans right. So it's really handy whether you're making socks or sweaters or what have you. It can be really nice to know how to do those decreases that lean in either direction. All right, so once again, I have the first 5 rows of the block done, cast on 48, did those rows. We are once again going to do a setup row that is worked only once and that will serve as our substitute row 1 for the first time through the pattern. And we are going to increase 3 stitches over the course of that setup row in order to get to a total of 51 stitches. All right, so we will get started with that. I will go ahead and do that with you, and then row 2 is just a knit 3, purl 5, knit 3, repeat. So I will turn the camera off and then come back for row 3, which will be the first place that we do the slip, slip, knit decrease. All right. So per the usual, we're going to work our 4 border stitches in seed stitch. Then the instructions tell us to knit front and back, knit 18, knit front and back, knit 19, knit front and back, and then we'll work the final 4 border stitches. All right. So just to review real quickly, knit front and back is just like it sounds. You're gonna come in the front of the stitch, just like that. Wrap your yarn, pull it through, then turn and come in through the back of that same stitch, wrap and pull through so that you now have 2 stitches where there was 1 before. All right, then we'll knit 18. Once again, we're gonna work a knit front and back, come in through the front, wrap my yarn, pull it through, don't pull that stitch off, come in through the back of the same stitch, wrap the yarn, pull it through, and now there's 2 stitches coming from that 1 stitch. All right, you're just gonna knit 19, knit front and back once more, then your 4 border stitches, and I'll come back for row 3 where we'll do the slip, slip, knit for the first time. All right. Okay, so here we are back and ready to work body row 3. We worked the setup row once, worked row 2, Now we're ready to work row 3, which will be the first time that we actually do the SSK. So, per our usual, we will still work those 4 border stitches. Come on. And then our instructions are to purl 3 once. 1, 2, 3. And then we start with the pattern that repeats across the body of the block, which is to knit 1, yarn over, SSK, knit 2, purl 3, and then repeat. So knit 1, of course, everybody knows. Yarn over, I'm just going to bring my working yarn up to the front of my work, because when I go to work that next stitch or set of stitches, the yarn is going to come up and over my needles to create that yarn over. All right, we've gone over that some in previous blocks. Now, the SSK or slip slip knit is going to be just like it sounds. Again, with my yarn still held at the front of my work, because we're going to work that yarn over. I'm going to slip a stitch as if to knit it, slip a second stitch, then I come back into those stitches with my left hand needle, wrap my yarn, knit those stitches together, and then I've created a stitch with the yarn over, and I've done a decrease here, knitting those 2 stitches together. You can kind of see how this stitch comes leaning into the neighboring stitch, and the stitch that was on the right hand side is laying on top. So that's going to lean to the left. All right, so we had 2 stitches there. We still have 2 stitches there because one was created with the yarn over, and then we took away one doing the slip slip knit. Then we knit 2, purl 3, then again we're going to knit 1, yarn over, that means I bring the yarn up to the front of my work. I'm going to slip, slip, bring my yarn through, knit, that's the slip slip knit, SSK, knit 2, purl 3. Now I did that a little quickly the last time I did it, so I will do it a little more slowly again now. Knit 1, yarn over, means I bring my yarn, my working yarn up to the front of my work. I'm going to slip this stitch as if to knit it. I'm going to slip the next stitch as if to knit it. That's the slip slip. Now I bring my left hand needle back through these stitches, both of them. My yarn that's held at the front of my work comes up and over my needle. That's where the yarn over is being created there. And I'm pulling that wrap through just as if I'm knitting it, but I'm knitting those 2 stitches together. All right. Knit 2. Purl 3, knit 1, yarn over, bring my yarn up to the front of my work, slip as if to knit, slip again, bring the needle tip through, wrap, and knit. knit 2, purl 3, now it looks like we have enough stitches for maybe one more repeat. Knit 1, yarn over, slip, slip, and knit. All right, knit 2, purl 3. And then I have my 4 border stitches that I work in seed stitch. All right, row 4 is again just working your stitches in sequence. You're going to work your 4 border stitches, knit 3, purl 5, knit 3, repeat that all the way across, work your 4 border stitches. That's all there is to that. I'll come back again for row 5, which also includes a slip slip knit, just to kind of review that. Then I'll turn off the camera for row 6, which again is just knit 3, purl 5, knit 3, all the way across. I'll turn the camera back on for row 1, which includes a slip slip knit. And then that's pretty much all there is to this block. So now that you know the slip slip knit, you just have to make sure you do those in the correct sequence. And that's really all there is to this block. Okay. All right, back again for row 5. You can see how we're starting to have those columns, that we've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns with our lace knit holes, each of which you can see is offset by 1 each time you go, so that they form these diagonal lines. All right, so now we're about to do another set of holes that will further that pattern. Now if you pull your work out, you can kind of see here how on that furthest left, or excuse me, furthest right on the column, we've got that hole that has appeared because of the yarn over, and then our decrease that slants toward the left. And that happens at each of those points. All right. So now we're ready to work row 5, which is going to be much the same, except that instead of knitting 1 and then yarning over, we're knitting 2 and then yarning over. So now the hole, instead of appearing here, is going to appear here. So it will be up 2 rows from this one, and it will have shifted over a stitch. And then in row 3, it's just yarn over at the very beginning and then slip slip knit. All right. So here's our 4 border stitches. Then we need to purl 3, which you can see that texture here. So we're largely just working those stitches the way they lay. Knit 2. Yarn over, which again, I'm bringing the yarn up to the front. Boy, this wool has some guard hairs in it. Yarn over is bringing my yarn up to the front, Then I'm going to slip, slip, knit. All right, and now you can see how that hole is going to appear diagonal up and to the left from the previous hole. And this column of left leaning, decreasing stitches continues along that line. All right, knit 1, purl 3. Now you can see the purl 3s. If you were to get off at any point and wonder where you were, the knit columns are always going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches to them, while the reverse stockinette have 3 stitches to them. So if I lost track of where I was, say the doorbell rang, I had to put my knitting down, and then I'm coming back to it, I could see, oh, I'm at a purl 3 spot. All right, so I would purl 3 and then go back to the beginning of the body repeat, which is to knit 2, yarn over, slip, slip, knit, knit 1. All right, so knit 2, yarn over, bring my yarn up to the front of my work. Boy, this end is getting in my way. Yarn up to the front of my work, slip, slip, bring the tip back through, knit them, knit 1, purl 3, 1, 2, 3, and again, knit 2, yarn over, slip, slip, tip back through, knit them, knit 1, purl 3. Now I'm going to show you on this next one, sometimes yarn overs can be a little bit tricky because there's no column of stitches below them. They're this newly created stitch. So what would happen if, say I was knitting along and oh no, my stitches fell off. I go to put them back on, but now that yarn over that was there has just sort of disappeared. Instead of 5 stitches in this column of stockinette, I now only have 4. You know, how could I fix that without going back and tearing out the whole thing? I can see here that this set of stitches is leaning toward the left. So to me, this is pretty obvious that this is where the decrease happened. Again, the first stitch that you slip in the slip, slip, knit is going to be the one that's lying on top. So this was the first stitch involved in slip, slip, knit. So the yarn over had to happen right before that. I also know that in my last row, I worked a row 3, and that's knit 1, yarn over, slip, slip, knit. Okay? So this time, in row 5, I have knit 2, yarn over, slip, slip, knit. So in order to get to the place where that yarn over should be, I'm going to knit the 1 that would have been knit in row 3. Hopefully this makes sense to everybody. I know that this, the row that was worked previously is a wrong side row, a row 4, where we just knit 3, purl 5, knit 3 all the way across. So that is not the stitch that got, this is not the strand with which the yarn over was worked. It's the strand right below it. So this one would have been one that I looped over my needle when I worked row 3. I'm then going to grab the strand that was worked in row 4 and pull it up and through the stitch orient it correctly back on my needle, and then I can see that I now have knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that column of stockinette stitches. My yarn over is back before the decreased stitch. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. It's just a way to read your knitting, and it's not too late to go down and grab that stitch and pull it back up so you don't have to unravel all your work. Okay? So in row 5, I actually knit 2. So the second stitch is knit right above that hole. Yarn over, pull my yarn up to the front of my work, slip, slip, and knit. Knit 1, purl 3, knit 2. Once again, you can see that the next stitch I'm knitting is the one that's right over the yarn over hole. The second stitch I'm knitting is the one that resulted from the yarn over. So when I corrected the mistake earlier, I was just pulling that yarn over back up so that I could knit it. Yarn over, slip, slip, knit, knit 1, purl 3, and then my 4 border stitches. All right. And that's really all there is to this block. Again, we're going to work a row 6, which is a wrong side row. Knit 3, purl 5, knit 3 all the way through with those body stitches. And I'll turn the camera back on once more for row 1. And then for the entire block, you are just working rows 1 through 6 10 times, ending after a row 5. So you won't work that final row 6, you won't work the wrong side row, because that is a row in which we decrease back down to 48 stitches and compensate for those increases we made in the setup row. All right. So hopefully that has made sense. Again, I'll come back and work row 1 just so that we see how that works. And if I think of any other ways to try and correct mistakes or have anything to point out in the course of working this, then I will certainly come back and do that. All right, here we are back again, having worked row 6. So then we go back up to the top of those body patterns, pattern rows, and go back to row 1. All right. Once again, just working the 4 border stitches. All right, purl 3, maintaining the continuity of that reverse stockinette beginning there, yarn over, which means my yarn's at the front of my work. Now, having just purled that stitch, my yarn's already at the front of my work, right? So, sorry, there's a little burr in this wool. So there's really nothing to do here. The yarn over is going to occur when I work the slip, slip, knit that follows. All right, I know a lot of people get mixed up thinking that you have to do something, you have to knit a stitch in order to complete that yarn over instruction. And you do not. The yarn over, a YO, is just about the position of your yarn. All right, there's nothing else you need to do other than to make sure that your yarn goes up and over your work when you're completing the next instruction, which in this case, again, is a slip, slip, knit. So we purled 3, yarn over, yarn's already at the front. Okay, so actually with this yarn over, there's nothing else to do except know that you do not bring your yarn to the back of your work for the next stitch. So here it is, slip, slip, and knit. All right, knit 1, yarn over, bring my yarn up to the front, another slip, slip, knit, and then we purl 3. So actually in row 1, you are creating 2 holes and 2 slanted columns instead of just 1 as in the rows previous. So I will stretch this out a little and show you what that looks like. So there's the first hole that will become more obvious when I knit the wrong side row. And there's the second hole. All right. And that's how we're completing those diagonal rows of holes that come on up and starting the next set of diagonal holes that run up through the column. Okay. So again, I've worked the purl 3 that's between those columns, yarn over, yarn's already at the front of my work. I don't have to do anything. Slip, slip, knit. Oops, got a little tangled there. Come on. Knit 1, yarn over. Now for this one I need to bring it back to the front of my work. Slip, slip, knit, purl 3, yarn over, already there, slip, slip, knit, knit 1, yarn over, slip, slip, knit, purl 3. Yarn over, yarn's already at the front, having completed a purl stitch, slip, slip, knit, knit 1, yarn over, slip, slip, knit, oops, purl 3. Now say I wanted to create a yarn over between purl stitches. We don't do that in this block, but just as a for instance, your yarn's already at the front of your work when you're purling. So if you wanted to create a hole in your work, a yarn over in between purl stitches, you would actually come up and over the needle and back to the front. I'll do that one more time just to show you. So my working yarn's already at the front, having done a purl stitch. I would come up, over, and back to the front of my work before I worked that following purl stitch, and that would create a yarn over between purl stitches. But we don't have to do that in this block. We get to do lazy yarn overs no added work. So I'm going to purl that third stitch and yarn over, slip, slip, knit. My yarn's already at the front of my work, nothing to do. Slip, slip, knit, knit one. Now for this one I have to bring my yarn up, slip, slip, and knit, and purl 3. Okay, so that row 1 is the only one where maybe it's a little bit tricky because you've got those 2 yarn overs happening within that column and one of your yarn overs follows a purl stitch. So it feels like there's something to do, but really your yarn's already where it needs to be. You just don't bring it to the back of your work before working that next stitch. Okay? And that's really it. Hopefully this feels like an easy block to you. Maybe you stumbled a little bit with those yarn overs going, oh gosh, it feels like I should do something more here than just position my working yarn, but I assure you that's it. That's all there is to doing a yarn over. No stitch that needs to be done until the stitch that follows the yarn over. All right, and we're working our diagonal decreases there and our rows of holes, and we'll just continue that on up the block. Again, we repeat that 10 times. Having worked row 1 and 2 here, we are at the very beginning of our second repeat. So I need to go ahead and finish my second repeat and then go back and do it 8 more times, ending with a row 5 on my final time through. Okay, so you can use your row counters, you can make little hash marks on a piece of paper, or you can actually count these little columns of holes and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then there's a 10th one. On this one it's a little more obvious, the one at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just making sure that you stop after completing a row 5. Okay, so here we are, having completed 10 repeats of those body rows. And you can count them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can just make out those last holes up there. I ended on a row 5, and now I'm ready to work the decrease row, which is very simple. We've done the purl 2 together before. Purl 19, purl 2 together, purl 18, purl 2 together. And that just decreases by 3 stitches, taking us back down to a total of 48 once again to complete the top border. So I'm not going to belabor this, I'll just demonstrate real quickly how to do the purl 2 together. And then I think you should probably be good to go for this block, and it's just completing the top order and blocking it out. You can see how, because of this sort of ribbed pattern, the block wants to pull in on itself. When you get it wet and block it out, pinning it out, that will easily fix that problem, and your block should be exactly the same size as all the others. Okay, we're getting close to having completed all of the blocks, and we'll have to work on seaming them together soon. So right now, let's go ahead and do the decrease row, which is a wrong side row. And we'll work those first 4 border stitches in seed stitch. All right, now we're going to work the first purl 2 together So I've got 2 stitches here. Gonna insert my needle through both of them before I then wrap. Pull the stitch through both and done. From 2 stitches, now I have 1 stitch. Then it's just purl 19, 19, and again, this purl 2 together looks a little bit funny because it involves a yarn over, but it's still just the same thing. We're going to go through both of them, wrap, pull through. You'll see it still leaves the hole intact down there, but now we've decreased by a stitch. All right, and you don't need to watch me purl across the whole entire row. Hopefully you have that. Because we're just going to purl 18 more, purl 2 together, and then be ready to work that top border. Okay, that's it, all blocked out. That is a wrap for block number 10, Slip Slip Knit. If you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it.